last week we spoke about how the book came to be, what was setting us back, why I wrote the book, and what was the process for me. This week, I want to dive into the marketing aspect of it, how we've sold the book, how we're still selling the book, and get into what I think not a lot of people share, which is the actual strategy. Some things totally worked and were great, and some things completely flopped. With us today is Jessica again, who's going to interview me. Jessica was a huge part of the launch of the book. And if you haven't listened to the previous episode, I really invite you to listen to that first. Yeah, let's get started. Hi, Jessica.
Hey, Talia. All right, so let's talk. I think it'd be fun to open up with one of our biggest obstacles when it came to publishing and launching the book itself, and that was the cover debacle. That really, we were about this close to having to move the launch itself because of the cover problem. So do you mind sharing that story?
Yeah, absolutely. I can also look for it. I think when I talk about this, people don't believe how crazy this is and how real it was. So before we launched, we had a different cover. If you guys are watching this on YouTube, then Jessica's showing it right now. And if you know the book, you know it's completely different than, what we have out. But we literally printed out a completely different cover. Choosing a cover for your book is a big challenge. And I did not know what to go with. And when I first started planning the cover, I really wanted it to be respectable. I don't know if that's the word, but I was worried because it's a book about emotions. And I think that my go-to was, look, it's about marketing and I want it to look like other books. I want it to feel like businessy and important and I don't know, like other books, worth the read. And then we spent so much time putting together this cover and we printed it. We printed a couple of copies to see what it looks like. And I was super excited to get it in the mail. And then I got it and I looked at it. And both Jessica and I at the same time basically wrote to each other, this isn't going to work. This is terrible. And it was terrible, not because it's bad. It's just that it looks like every other single book out there. And it had nothing. It didn't have my personality in it. It didn't have any of the things that make me stand out. And I think that was the first challenge that we had when I realized that, hey, one of the biggest feedbacks, and again, if you watched last week's episode, you know that the biggest feedback we got was, I can't hear Talia. I want to hear more of your voice because I was borifying myself. I was trying to sound more professional. I was trying to sound like whatever I had in my brain that was a professional author voice. And no one liked it. And I did the exact same thing to the cover. I tried to make it look like other things that aren't me. And I think it was it like a week before the launch? Maybe less? Oh my God.
No, it was a little bit more. I think it was down to the last 2 or 3 weeks. And I just remember I was at the computer for a weekend and I had the epiphany. And then I wrote to you and said, what if we do this? And you were like, yes, let's go.
I wanted comic book stuff. So definitely, if you know me, I'm a comic book nerd. I can't shut up about comic books and heroes. And my entire wardrobe is basically Wonder Woman t-shirts and comic book heroes. And that is part of my brand. When I email, those are my gifts. When I talk about stuff and I give examples, it's about heroes and comic book. And Jessica, you had the wonderful idea of like, let's make it look like a comic book. And this was a big bet, okay? Because when you're doing a business book and you go all the way from boring blue like every other book to complete shift into this is now a comic book, and not only is the cover going to be yellow and blue and green and orange and red and going to have like bubbles and stuff on it, also internally we're going to add quotes and all sorts of like blurbs from comic book heroes. We went all in. And it paid off. I have to say it paid off because Yes. Okay. Yes. And I love it now. I do love it. I love it more than anything. And I think it did pay off because the amount of people that were just posting about the cover, that were just posting about, I have never seen a business book like this. I've never seen these colors. I've never seen anyone use comic books as a business book. It's so cool. And it was just really, we made, funnily enough, we made it, I don't want to say Instagrammable, but we made it unintentionally, yeah, Instagrammable, I guess is the word, which I don't
Yeah.
like. But yeah.
No, it's true. It's so true. And I'm so happy for, and since you brought it up, we have to show people on YouTube the inside, like the quote pages, and just so much fun we had doing that. Once we had it, I just felt like it was one of those moments where when I got the idea, shared it with you, and you're like, yes, it was like synergy. It was all coming together and it just felt right. Which, if you're in, I mean, if you're in marketing, if you're in anything, you know, those moments you have to celebrate them because they're just so few and far between, frankly. And
Yes.
so it was one of those moments where we were like, yes, this makes total sense. And then the feedback, like you mentioned, seeing people showing it, and then also just simply when it went up live for pre-order, I remember I mean, we had done plenty of research, so I'd seen it before, but seeing the actual pre-order and the cover was there amongst other business books, it became glaringly obvious, I think, that we had made the right choice for
Yeah.
your book, because every other book, it was just like, yep, they look exactly the same. And then there was
Yeah.
yours, and it was so jarring. It was, how could you not look at this cover, you know? So
Yeah.
yeah, I'm so
Yeah.
thrilled with that cover.
Yeah, it was definitely a good choice. And also something I think, we're talking about marketing today. So I think if you are anyone who's thinking about putting together a book, the cover does matter. And
Yes.
there's obviously templates of book covers and stuff, but at the end of the day, you do need to go with what makes you authentically you, especially these days with zero-click marketing, brand authority, your own persona and who you are has to come through in everything that you do, not just your book cover, but if you're posting on social, if you're writing blog posts. I got a notification. So I use Alert Mouse, which is a brilliant product, highly recommend. Gives you daily alerts of where you're mentioned online. And honestly, I don't know what I did without it because beforehand I never knew where I get mentioned. I got a really cool mention last week in some blog I really didn't hear about before. And I went in there to see, oh, who's talking about me? And it was a blog post just summarizing the best blogs to learn about optimization and marketing. And in the blurb, the author so kindly said, I often find myself at night giggling while reading Talia's blog posts. And I think, first of all, that is such incredible feedback because I do actually really enjoy writing blog posts. I do enjoy making references to all sorts of pop culture and whatever and comic book stuff. And that is my brand. So it's not just that I went all out in a book cover because I wanted it to stand out. It's a choice that I make in everything that I do, whether if it's on LinkedIn, in my blog post, in my newsletter, and yes, my book, to speak in a certain way that it is very obvious that it's me showing up and not anyone else. And I think that is super important.
Absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about the pre-launch stage and what was going on before the book actually had its official launch date. What were you doing before that?
So, first of all, the first thing I was doing was reaching out to friends, colleagues, and anyone who's ever taken our courses or workshops and clients. So anyone who's ever engaged with us and loved my content. So we have Emotion Cells, which is the course that I teach. And I reached out to all the students there and I reached out to anyone who was interested in getting an advanced copy of the book. And for me, that was number one, where I wanted to get feedback from people and hear what they have to say. And if needed, change anything last moment, but also get authentic feedback about the book that we could use as testimonials, as social proof, and also ask people if they wouldn't mind just posting about the book. Because one of the first things that I heard from any other author I've spoken to is you have a launch date, and on that launch date, you need everyone posting about your book. Everyone needs to be talking about it. So my biggest part of the launch was just connecting with anyone I could think of that I appreciate, that I value, that values what I do, and kindly ask them to take a look at the book, offer a review, maybe post on the same day. We created blurbs and a document with a ton of content to make it easier to share, and of course all sorts of experts and stuff. So that was the biggest part of the pre-launch on my end. The other thing that we were doing is, Jessica, you were doing a great job with this, is basically taking a bunch of the content from the book and repurposing it as social posts, blog posts, to essentially start getting the conversation going. And essentially in every post that I made on any social media and any email that I sent, I was saying, hey, my book's coming out, my book's coming out, the book's coming out. So that was a big thing. But what about you? What else? What do you remember, Jessica? What were you kind of working on in the pre-launch?
I think the most important thing that I was working on in the pre-launch was the pre-launch bonuses. So the things that you get when you're in pre-launch and the book is not available, so like you can't go anywhere and send it, but you can see it available for sale on Amazon, Kobo, Barnes & Noble, all the places. And then when it actually drops, then you'll get it sent. But pre-launch, oftentimes, as you know, so many authors will put it up for sale. And that's a really important stage. And so because of that, bonuses, pre-order bonuses are really important. So we were putting together basically all the cool things and gifts and supporting materials that someone might want with the book. So we were putting that together. And of course, we had the bonuses themselves. And then those were a variety of formats, like more PDFs, templates, tools to help people execute faster, different industry kind of stuff. And then also there was some video bonus kind of content that we were in just having to create, finalize, update any branding so that it was consistent with the book. And then, of course, there's the whole funnel that goes along with pre-order. So, and it's important because what a lot of people don't know, and I don't think you knew this, was that when you see a book on Amazon or Barnes & Noble or Kobo or those places, they don't give you the names of the people who buy your book. So you really have no idea who, and you also don't have any contact information. So you cannot keep a conversation going with anyone who's bought your book from those channels. So the bonuses are another way to get around that, to find out who bought your book and then also start a conversation with them, because that's how you deliver the bonuses, is through their email. So we were working on that. A large portion of the process was working on the bonuses because they're so important, so that you could continue talking to your readers. So talk to me a little bit about the week before the launch date. What was going through your mind? How were you feeling?
I don't know. I think when you're in that space, you're no longer really thinking about like the emotional stuff. You're just like, I have a checklist. Everything has to happen now. I need to finish with it all and let's get going. I will say that the best piece of advice that I got was actually from April Dunford. She said, don't treat your launch as a 1-day thing or a 1-week thing. Treat your launch as an entire year. So that actually took the pressure off from me immediately, because yes, of course I wanted the first day of the launch, when we go live, to be incredible, to sell a ton of books and to mostly just like get that going. But knowing that we're treating this as a full year launch, so all of our energy is going towards launching the book throughout the entire year, just made it a lot easier on an emotional level, but also just planning. We didn't have to do everything at once. We could say, okay, here's all the stuff that we need to do in the first week. And here's all the stuff that we want to do throughout the year. And we had loads of plans to do different things, whether if it was creating our bundle or if it was speaking on stage. There was a whole strategy just to that. I did, I think, 16 speaking engagements last year just for the launch, just speaking all over the world and giving my keynote about emotional targeting, but also getting conferences to buy the book. So there was a lot of different strategies that we could execute throughout the entire year. And I didn't have to feel like everything hinges on this one particular day. And if it doesn't go well, then oh no, it's done. You're never getting it back. And that really helped me.
So I've seen a lot of authors do a variety of launch events and, launch party and all that. You did something different. You were on the road when your book launched. And remember, you had back to back conferences where your book was being sold and all of that.
Yeah.
But you were at one event on launch day, and then I don't even think it was a week later you were speaking at another event. Talk about that approach to, instead of having one big party, you were at conferences, you were on tour.
Yeah, it was actually quite cool. I think it was 4 or 5 conferences back to back lined up. The first one that I did was the event in London for MailChimp and Intuit. They have an incredible conference called Forward. And so I did the London keynote. It was so cool, but it was the actual day of the launch. And I didn't time it that way. It just happened. And I was like, okay, so on launch day, this is where I'm going to be. And what was nice is that MailChimp actually had this beautiful bookstore that they put up with a bunch of books. And they also asked me in advance what books I recommend. So they had my friends' books. So they had like Gia and Claire's book there, Forget the Funnel. And it was just really cool to have all those books around there. I got there on the day and obviously like I did my keynote, but I also got to do a book signing and a bunch of people got my book for free. And it was actually so much fun. And from there, yeah, I went to Germany and I did some events there and I came back to London and I was in Europe quite a bit those few weeks. And it was actually really nice because obviously when you're online, it's nice because you can get to everyone, but being in person, and I actually had also this really annoying thing with the post. I actually never got my real book, the actual book, in time because we had the whole change the cover snafu. So the first time I was holding the book was in London at Forward London. So for that MailChimp's event. So that was also really cool. But yeah, it was fun because you're surrounded by a bunch of people and you can see how people really are impacted by your talk, and then they go and get your book. And it was nice to just talk to people and hear what they're doing and where they're focused on and why they want to read the book and what they're hoping to get out of it. So even that was it was really empowering for me to see that, okay, yes, I created a book that people want and need and value. And it went on for quite a while. I mean, as I said, I did a lot of speaking and it was really cool to just travel the world and meet people and see. By the way, by the time I reached the US and I was doing conferences in the US, people were coming to the conferences, had already read my book. And that was even cooler because then they could, they had questions and they wanted to ask things and they had ideas. So it was fun to just do the whole thing on the road. And again, everyone does it differently. Some people have parties and they do meet in person, and some people do online events. And we did do some like online Zoom calls with different people and stuff. But it was the traveling part that was really fun for me.
And at that point, was there a moment where you realized I finally wrote the book? Like, was there a moment hitting you that this process it's out there? No, of course you did.
So I loved being around people. And the incredible feeling was just seeing people hold the book and talk to me about specific things and knowing that, yes, it's out there, but not in the sense of like, I wrote a book, and more like a sense of so many more people can read this now and can learn it and can do it themselves. And I know that sounds funny, but it's just what it was. It wasn't really about me writing a book ever. It was just another way to spread the word.
Okay, now I know you say that, and I know all the business. We talked a lot about the importance for your business and your authority and all of that. But will you share the story with your grandfather? Because that is such a sweet story about your book and your grandpa.
Oh, yeah. So I was staying with my grandparents. My grandparents are, well, now they're 93, 92 back then. And I had a huge crate of books sent there because I was signing them and sending them to people. And I walked into the living room after like a long day of meetings and stuff. And I found my granddad, who's 92, who was an accountant. He had an accounting firm a long, long time ago, but had obviously not doing that for ages. He was just sitting in the living room reading my book. And he had marked all sorts of things in the book because he had questions. Now, bear in mind, this is a man who has no, no marketing knowledge, has never heard about a funnel, does not know, he knows what a website is and he uses WhatsApp to chat to me on video. But he was sitting there and reading my book. And I think, he had so many questions and we were just talking about what this means and what that means. And then he said, I like this. This is a really good reference. Or this is a really good example, Talia. And I think that's going to sit with me forever. Just being able to, I don't know, I just see my granddad read my book and really care. And it was an emotional moment for me. I was really happy. It was exciting because my granddad has done so much for me and my family, and none of us would be where we are today without him. So it was fun. It was a lot thanks to him. This book, my business, everything, my life, everything is thanks to him and my grandma. So it was emotional and exciting.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that's really important to say because we talk about all the marketing and business and sales aspects of a book and all that, but there's also a personal side of it, I think, for most people. So I think that's a really cool
Yeah.
story.
It's
So,
also funny, by the way, that
yeah.
my brother read the book and he said, I can finally explain what you do. I had no idea what you do, but now I know what you do and I read the book and I'm good to go.
So can you walk me through post-launch day? And you got that great advice from April Dunford to make it a year-long event instead of just one day. So
Yeah.
can you talk a little bit about what's happened since? What have you continued to do for ongoing authority building with the book?
Yeah. So, I mean, the book always had a goal. The goal was to get leads for the agency. So, and that's important to remember because, again, I didn't write a book for the sake of writing a book. And yes, there was a lot of reasons to it. And as mentioned, watch the previous episode for that. But I think that's an important reminder because you're using it as a marketing tool to market yourself, build your authority, and grow your business. And the results were really cool because yes, we sold a lot of books, got some really good reviews, and also really got a lot of people talking about the book, uploading photos with the book. And that was really fun, just seeing people basically marking up the book and saying, oh, this is incredible, this is amazing, with Post-its and notes and stickers. And then also people saying like, oh, I mapped it all out on my whiteboard. And that was really fun because there was a lot of discussion online about the book. What happened throughout the year was, as I mentioned, I spoke on different stages all over about emotional targeting. And one of the strategies was asking conferences to buy the books in order to give them for free to attendees, because I wanted as many people to actually have books in their hands and read. So that was one of the strategies, and it worked pretty well. And then in addition to that, we started writing a lot of more content and talking a lot more about the book. And the results were interesting. We started getting leads for the agency, obviously. But one result that I wasn't expecting was actually people who I would reach out to us and ask for our services would, not everyone is sold. You get on a sales call with someone, and whether if you're selling a CRO audit or complete services, or maybe I'm talking to them about workshops or team training, or even just like taking our course, because we have a bunch of teams that buy tickets for the course, not everyone gets sold on a call. Sometimes they have questions. And I started saying to people, why don't you read the book first? And I would send the book to them. And it became such a good salesperson for me because this happened quite a few times where people would reach out a few weeks later and they're like, I've read the book. Okay, we're ready to hire you guys. And that was an incredible result of the book can actually also do a lot. So yeah, I think that was mostly what we focused on in the first year, which is, coming to a wrap now. Talking about the book, also creating the bundle that we have on the website. So if you guys go to taliawolf.com/book, you can buy the book from Amazon or Kobo or even Gumroad and all those good spaces. But what I wanted to do is create a bunch of worksheets and templates for people at a minimal price so that they could do that on the website. So we created a bundle where people could buy the digital copy of the book, but also get immediate templates and stuff to start working on it and implementing. And that's been very well received. So that's been cool. And it's always fun. I would say the downside to that is that you don't get a lot of Amazon reviews. So a lot of people are buying the bundle, but you're not seeing that on Amazon, which again, doesn't really matter because that's a vanity metric. So you need to go back to what you're trying to achieve. And that's why I said that at the beginning. Remember why you're writing the book. The book for me, for the team, for us was we're selling. We're trying to get more leads. We're trying to build the agency more, or we're trying to get more team trainings and workshops and courses in there or consulting. That is the goal. So it doesn't matter how many sales you have on Amazon or how many reviews you have on Amazon. Those vanity metrics don't matter. What matters is that when people get the book in their hand, they're sold, and they are. So I think that's cool.
Yeah, I remember that a few months after you were sharing how much just even more aware of emotional targeting in your philosophy and the depth of knowledge leads were having on calls as compared to before. The other one I really remember, and this one happened in pre-order. Do you remember there was a gentleman who reached out to you? You had just announced not the launch of the book, but the pre-order. So it wasn't even out there yet. So he didn't have it in hand, but you had gotten an email from a guy. He said he had been on the email list for 4 or 5 years and was just always reading everything you put out, whatever. And then I remember the line was, I saw you wrote a book and I knew you were the one to work with. And what I just remember finding it so fascinating, one, that it was a book that finally got him to reach out and ask for your help. But also, he didn't even see the book itself. He just saw you had written a book. And that was enough. He didn't need it in his hands yet. And he was like, hey, you're the one to work with. And I loved that the book was the thing where he just pointed at that authority building work. And for whatever reason, a book made him say, okay, she's the one to work with, which I just thought was interesting. The power still of books, because, I mean, it's just, especially with AI and how quickly we can create things. You always talk about that. It is so easy right now to make stuff and put stuff out there.
Yeah.
But a book that takes, if you're not using AI, which you didn't, and I think that's important to say.
Yeah.
Like, a book takes time, and there is still such a respect that, people have for authors and books. And I really loved that. And I thought that was amazing how that was the thing that got him convinced, that persuaded him after 4 or 5 years. So,
yeah, I find it interesting because I guess for me, I don't see it as like, oh, this person wrote a book, therefore this person is more qualified or more professional. But I have seen it over the past year. The book itself, just publishing a book, was a thing, which I was not expecting. The amount of people or stages I got on or mentions that I get now where people specifically say the author of the best-selling book, Emotional Targeting. It is a positioning thing. It is a branding thing. It's an authority building thing. Again, not the reason I wrote the book, but ultimately, if this is something that impacts you as a buying decision and you want to work with someone who published a book, I get that. And that was a really interesting result too. I wasn't expecting to be more respected because I wrote a book. And again, we spoke about this last week. I wouldn't have published it earlier because it didn't make sense, but it's definitely a cool angle.
So as we're wrapping up, I think I have one final question. Where does author Talia go from here? What's coming up next?
Well, author Talia doesn't want to write anything ever again. And please. But over the past year, because I've been doing so much speaking and because I've met with thousands of marketers and I've worked with hundreds of brands, and even just in the past year, that I've started talking a lot about the idea of optimizing everywhere. with emotion. So the book itself is about the framework of emotional targeting and how to use emotion and why emotion matters and the 3-step process that you have to take. But it's highly focused on the assets that you own, meaning your website, your landing pages, your emails, your ads, how to weave emotion and relate to your customers and meet them on an emotional level wherever they are in your customer journey. But in the past year, I've been talking a lot about optimizing everywhere. The fact that people are now making buying decisions off of your website. They're making decisions on Reddit, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, on Discord, all over the web. And you have to be in those spaces. You have to know your customers in the deepest way, really know them, really understand them in order to create a connection with them. But it's no longer enough to just do that on your website. It's no longer enough to leverage emotional targeting in your ads or your landing pages. You also have to do that everywhere your customers and your prospects are hanging out and making decisions. And so we've started testing a lot of that at the agency, working on Reddit, in video, on LinkedIn, in social media, really just testing the waters with our clients. And we're seeing really incredible results. So I'm hoping to work on that for the next year, I would say. And then if it's good enough and I feel that we have enough frameworks we can give people, I would love to add that to the book on then how to use emotional targeting, not only in the assets that you own, but how to connect with your customers everywhere and impact everything, including the LLMs and what people are saying about you and how to shape the narrative in a way that connects with your customers on a deeper level and increases conversions.
All right. Tell you the one thing that I've noticed post launch is that we have had numerous requests for an audiobook. How's that going?
It's not. I mean, it should be going, but it's not. I am so busy. And I feel like, do people really want an audiobook? Just hearing me talk for
Okay.
hours.
Okay, then let's do this. If you are listening to this right now and you would really appreciate an audiobook because many of us only listen to audiobook or weirdos like me like to have the copy and listen to the audiobook at the same time. Would you please, whatever platform you're in, either if you're in the podcast, leave a review and mention that you would really appreciate an audiobook. If you're on YouTube or Instagram or whatever, like and leave a comment that an audiobook would just be greatly appreciated. And we will see if somehow we can get this on Talia's calendar.
I walked into that trap knowingly. So thank you very much, Jessica, for interviewing me. Thank you for everything that you have done for this book. I really appreciate you and I'm thankful for everything. And if anyone's listening, you guys should know that this book journey is what started Jessica and I to become business partners and work on many other things. So I'm highly appreciative of you, Jessica. So thank you. And everyone else, if you have any questions about the book or if you have questions about launching or publishing your own book, let me know in the comments and I will see you next week in another episode of Heart Before Cart.